This is a lament about Scottish rugby, not to be confused with a Lamont who represented Scotland at rugby and could often be found either injured or playing wing, inside centre, outside centre, doctor, or testing the limits of Google Safe Search. Now, like so much of Scottish rugby, there's a cruel irony to this video, namely, it's one that I'd originally planned to make before the Six Nations as we headed towards the opening round with a usual sense of pre-tournament foreboding. But then Twickenham happened and, well, scrap that idea. But then Saturday happened. And oh god, it's relevant again. This is the agony of supporting Scotland. Now, unlike the fantasy world dreamt up by people like Eddie O'Sullivan,
they always talk themselves up. They always talk a great game.
But why, Eddie?
Because they have some deluded notion that they're actually better than they are.
I think I speak for most Scots when I say we don't go into tournaments with high hopes or mad expectations, barren years, well, decades actually, of being repeatedly kicked in the teeth have seen to that. And let's face it, it's hard to get that excited about a tournament when you've lost 18 of the opening 21 games to date.
If you're going to open your championship, who better than Scotland?
And whereas Irish, Welsh, English and French fans typically start every year with genuine optimism and reasons to back it up, I can tragically say that I've never sat here and thought, this could be our year. Instead, it's less a case of wondering about titles and point permutations, and more a case of thinking, potentially we might win a game here or there. From a Scottish perspective, the Six Nations is really more of a series of incredibly unfriendly friendlies. A collection of standalone matches rather than one large cohesive tournament. And it's this diminished, depressing way of looking at the tournament that brings with it an equally depressing thought. Will that view ever change? Can Scotland bridge the gap between other home nations and France? And well, this is a question that's nagged at me for years now, especially since it's clear to see the team itself has improved dramatically from when I first started watching. The issue though is so is everyone else. It's a dilemma perhaps best illustrated by the scene from Futurama. The Planet Express crew are ambushed by
space pirates
and in the heat of battle inadvertently fire the robotic mate Bender out of a ship instead of a torpedo. Seriously, bear with me, this analogy checks out. A horrified Fry begs Leela to rescue him, but they soon run into a problem.
It's no use. We were going full speed when we fired him, so he's going even faster than that.
You mean we can never catch up to him?
I don't know how to say this, Fry, but Bender is doomed to drift through space. Forever.
That fear of eternal drift is one that keeps me up into the early hours and has turned the life of a Scottish rugby fan into something of a reverse doomsday cult, constantly searching for signs that the world is about to brighten, that the corner has at last been turned. And over the years, there have been a number of moments that seem to herald a sea change, although of course crushingly, that's never actually been the case, and instead, Scottish rugby has seen more false dawns than the Godfather editions. Twickenham, however, it seemed different. As a venue, it had long been an abattoir of Scottish dreams, a house of pain, home to some of the harshest results, from hammerings to soul-crushing last gasps. The idea of a result there was almost held in the same wishful thinking as a first ever win over the All Blacks, a fantasy worthy of light erotica. And yet, it happened. Sure, it didn't have the insanity of 2 years ago. Instead, Scotland produced a clinical and largely disciplined victory. Was it the perfect game? No. Did things go awry? Yes.
Oh, for fuck's sake! Fuck off, Ali!
Did they seemingly try their best to Scotland up at the end? Oh god, yes. But whereas 2 years ago that final phase would have ended with an English penalty, driving maul and subsequent tryout under the posts, this time they had the composure to see it out and boot it out. And with it came the real hope that at last the mythical corner had been turned, that the soft, spongy underbelly had finally been replaced with hardened steel, a new, streetwise edge instead of a perennial deer in headlights, a new team, a new hope. These feelings lasted just shy of 7 days. Now, it would be easy to blame the ref,
Fun too.
and point to failings such as missing the snow-arms effort from Wainwright a metre out, Liam Williams getting away with a forearm smash to the throat of James Lang, that same Liam Williams then tackling Stuart Hogg off the ball in overtime in an eminently kickable position. But what makes Saturday so especially painful is that none of these should ever have mattered. Not even the red card, as ultimately, having built a healthy lead, Scotland had repeated chances to put that game to bed, but instead, they shat the bed.
Obstruction, crossing.
Adding to the agony of Saturday is that aside from the rasher penalties, there was actually a lot to enjoy in that performance. We had Doohan treating Halfpenny like loose change, Ali Price and Darcy Graham displaying the same sort of telepathy usually the reserve of the Horn brothers, Finn Russell doing Finn Russell things, and who could forget Johnny Gray's wonderful impression of an Ent storming Isengard. It could also be argued that the way Scotland fronted up whilst down a player and the manful way Stuart Hogg tried to quite literally drag them over the line was brave. A word, incidentally, that I've come to utterly loathe over the years as one synonymous with Scottish defeats. On a similar vein, seeing Saturday's match described as a classic is enough to make me reach for the bottle. We've been involved in far too many of these over the years, and never on the winning side. And that's the worst thing with all of this, the same old script, big result, not backed up the following week. A team seemingly content to rest on their laurels, just like Hardy. Which brings me back to those pre-Six Nations feelings of pessimism, but as opposed to being a catalyst to bigger and better things like Wales's 2008 duck-breaking win at Twickenham, at present, ours is just another standalone result, another flash in the pan. Now, I don't want this entire video to be one massive downer because, at the risk of falling into the classic Scottish trap of looking up wishfully from the gutter, there are still reasons to be optimistic with this tournament. The squad remains an incredibly talented one, and whilst their destiny is no longer entirely in their own hands, they do still have a chance to win the tournament. Small vote maybe. In fact, the next few weeks could be very interesting, but unfortunately, in the meantime, we're back to being the same old Scotland.